Welcome to episode 33 of Concede, a podcast about Hearthstone. My name is Kenny, and all the way from Thunderbuff, Louisiana, we have Jace, a.k.a. Cinder, with us. Jace, how have you been?
A lot better since we got a new AC repairman. We're on number 3, but he's got us functional. Not fixed, but functional, and it is no longer a hotbox in my office, so I am ready to roll.
Perfect. And all the way from Undercity, Georgia, we have Andres. Andres, what have you been up to?
What's up, Kenny? I've been up to a lot of Hearthstone, let me tell you. Even though Overwatch Beta finally comes out, I thought I was going to be playing a lot more of it, but the new expansion has been so enthralling that I've been just playing Hearthstone nonstop this new season, especially.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
And our third host, all the way from Orgrimmar, Illinois, we have Cora. Cora, welcome back.
It's good to be back.
It's nice to have you
Finally.
back.
Yeah,
You've been busy.
came back to the show finally, and then last week came down with bronchitis and a combination of seasonal allergies, and my voice was gone, like completely gone. And then I jumped right back into podcasts. I did one yesterday, and I did Hearth Coach earlier today, so this is my third podcast in 2 days. So I've been neglecting my stream, but school's keeping me really busy, and I'm just glad to have some time to talk a little Hearthstone.
Nice. Yeah, I've been pretty much playing Hearthstone lately. Not like a lot, but here and there when I can. It's been a little busy. Again, it's still baseball season with my son. And then I played...
I saw he got his first hit.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
He got his second hit
Congrats.
today, actually.
Oh, that's great.
Excellent.
So he was super excited. And he got the game ball and everything, so he was really excited.
Oh,
And then my other son is actually going to be 1 on the 20th of this month, so in a couple weeks.
Man.
So we're planning his birthday party. It'll be Candyland themed. Yeah,
I'm so jealous.
it'll be cool. So other than that, I played a couple hours of the new season for Diablo 3, and I'm working on Demon Hammer this. But enough about other games with Blizzard. Let's go ahead and talk about Hearthstone.
Woo!
So let's go ahead and leave a little section here for our news. Let's talk about our news. All right, so number one thing, everyone is playing Hearthstone. We
Yeah.
have 50 million registered users, and that's the news.
I think that's all the news that you need to know.
That's
What else
big
do you say
news.
to that?
Basically, yeah. Now, what do you guys think? Do you think that's actually... Well, okay, it says registered users. So do you think that's actually people playing, or do you think that's...
No. I think
No,
that
no.
means like total accounts that have been registered with the game, but that includes like somebody that just registered for the account, played maybe the tutorial, and then never
And
touched the
forgot
game
about it.
again. Yeah.
But still, of the 50 million, that's a significant amount, I'm sure, are actually playing, and that's
Absolutely.
still really impressive.
Even if a fifth of those are active accounts, that's still a lot of people.
Yeah.
In my experience from other games, usually you have about 10% of registered users actually actively playing. And if you go off of that very, very rough benchmark, that's still 5 million people playing Hearthstone. That's a lot of people playing Hearthstone.
Hmm.
I know I have at least 2 other accounts that aren't used. One is my son's. He used to play quite a bit, but he doesn't really... He's more into watching YouTube now. And the other one I used to
You're
get
both at
my
the same
card back.
time.
Yeah. So, all right. Oh, that pretty much hit the news right on the nose. Let's make room for some tournament results. All right, Cinder, you want to go ahead and take us off with some of the tournament news? I can't even say the word.
Tournament news? Yeah. There, it was a busy weekend for tournament watchers. Not only because there's a lot of tournaments, but this was our first couple of tournaments in the standard format. So not even just a couple of days after the new set drops, all these players had to learn all the new stuff and come up with some all new decks. And we had some really great events over the weekend. Expo. It started as a little LAN convention in Canada in Toronto, and it has really grown into a big event. And this was actually where Canada's very first Hearthstone major took place this past weekend. So that gave out, it's a total of 43 HCT points, 15 to the winner, 10 to second place, 5 to third, and a few more down the line. A little bit of money was on the line, but a lot of prestige. Since this was a LAN tournament, this was an on-site 15 to the winner, 10 to second place, 5 to third, and a few more down the line. A little bit of money was on the line, but a lot of prestige. Since this was a LAN tournament, this was an on-site tournament, lots of Canada's up-and-coming players showed up, a lot of locals, but we did have some major names come through. At the round of 8, we had Dwayne, Prelude, N8, Dark Gammon, Firebat, we know that name, Neobility, you should know that name, Peter, and Talion. Of course, Talion we saw at the HCT finals for North America. Now, you might not be familiar with all those names, but trust me, in Canada, these guys are major tournament players. They play a lot of tournaments. Most of them have HCT points and have some open tournament finishes. With one notable exception, one name on that list, Dark Gammon, has no history in Hearthstone that we know of. In fact, he said on site that this was his very first Hearthstone tournament. Never played Hearthstone tournament before, and he got to the top 8. So congrats to him, and a great finish. But overall, really strong players in there. There were some great matches to be shown.
Yeah, for sure. I actually caught a little bit of it. The casting team of Chalky and That's Admirable was so fun to watch. Oh my gosh, it was great. But yeah, oh my, it was literally just memes back and forth the entire time. But they know their stuff, so it was entertaining and educational. It was a great team. And then I was that was on at the same time as Onog, which I think we're actually going to talk about. So it was a busy weekend. There were some really high profile tournaments going on with some really good players.
Yeah, so for the results for EGLX, we have third and fourth went to Talion and Dark Gammon. So once again, congrats to Dark Gammon. Talion picks up a few more HCT points, so chances are he will be at the prelims in spring. For the final match, we had a very, very close nail-biter match between Prelude and Neobility. Now, Neobility, you probably know if you've been watching tournaments. He's a strong player. He's in Canada, but he's connected to the Chinese community through Team Celestial. He's in on the QQ stuff with some of the really strong players. So he gets a lot of tournament traction. He gets a lot of respect from the pro players. Their match, as I said, went 3-2, and Prelude, his opponent, played 3 control decks, which I found really interesting. Most pros and tournament players will tell you that you want to kind of get some balance in your tournament lineup. Prelude took 3 total control decks. He had a Reno Lock, a pure control warrior, no Cthulhu variation, and Nazoth control paladin, and that was his premier deck. That was a fun deck to watch. A lot of great play came out of that. And Prelude, let me tell you, he has played in a few tournaments in Canada, but he's just 16 years old. He's another one of these, like I think of him as third wave players. You know, some of these newer, younger kids, they may have come from like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or something like that, but are graduating themselves into Hearthstone and getting into some real esports. Not that those don't have real esports; they have some very large tournaments, but making the next step into Hearthstone. And let me tell you something. Watching this kid was something else. He was cool as a cucumber the entire tournament. I mean, everyone he played against was stressed out, and they were hands on head and just trying their hardest to think their way through these really complex boards that he put together. And the whole time, this guy had all the urgency of somebody reading the menu at Chili's. Like, he was just very calmly, very collected, just playing through all of his turns, roped a lot, but never really seemed under any kind of stress. And I think that probably contributed a lot to his performance. I think his ability to think clearly and stay inside the moment and not tilt probably gave him the edge over such a strong player like Neobility.
Yeah, I mean, Neobility he's the person that you play against on ladder, and that he's sort of like Fibonacci, like you're scared. Like, you don't want to play against him because you know you're most likely going to lose, but if you win, it feels so good. And he was known for his Druid play, but now, obviously, standard format, he's branching out, and it's really great to see him actually in a tournament because he's most known for his ladder play. So, yeah, sort of like Fibonacci again. Yeah, Talion, great player. We saw him in the Americas Championship. Dark Gammon, I've actually run into on ladder also several times. I knew that name sounded familiar. Just a really great spread of talented players.
Yeah, and Neobility is one of those players that I refer to as one of the pantheon of ladder gods. He's just, when you say his name, if you've read a top 100 list, you know that name because you have seen it a lot. Absolutely. Next big tournament, this is the one that I was kind of really excited about, was Copa America Season 2 Finals. We finally had our final 8 play over the weekend down in Brazil. The top 8, we've talked about these names before, but the top 8 were Sudaca, APX Void, Diego Diaz, Correa, Marthstrike, Snail, GR2, and an alternate in Loxodont. Kirei Kitomi, for some reason, was not able to make it, and unfortunately, I know 0 Portuguese, so I could not really get any information on it. I realized too late that they had a Spanish language broadcast, and I could have watched that and maybe have caught half of it, but it is what it is. All of these guys are strong tournament players from Brazil and South America, with one exception. APX Void, he is a Canadian player from Team Hearthlytics. Now, Copa America was open to anyone in the Americas region, so that's all the way from the tip of Canada all the way down to the bottom of Chile. So anybody could, even though it was predominantly Brazilian and some other South American players, APX Void took this opportunity to jump in, and he took a huge trip all the way from Canada down to Rio to play in this tournament. So it was really cool to see him kind of repping North America for us. Third place went to Snail, who we've talked about before.
Snail.
Yes, he did really, really well. He got knocked out, but got the win in the third place match. He had some really cool decks, including he had a Dragon Priest deck that topped out with Deathwing Dragon Lord. Well, it was a really cool deck to watch. But the final match was between APX Void and Loxodont. Void won 3-2. And let me tell you something. It was a nail biter, absolutely super, super close match. But this whole time, man, the Brazilian casters they were not his friend the whole time.
Oh, no.
Anytime he made a play, it was a good play, or he spotted lethal, they were like, oh man. Anytime a Brazilian player got a good play against him, they were cheering and laughing, and it was really kind of funny. It's a little, almost kind of like carpetbagging a little bit down in Brazil, but they opened it up to everybody.
Pride, but like a little bit too far.
Yeah, but it wasn't good. It was good natured. They weren't being mean about it, but it was just fun to kind of watch. So big win for APX Void. That was his first really big LAN tournament and his first major win, as far as I could tell. And it's another big win for Team Hearthlytics, and I wanted to bring this up because Hearthlytics is a U.S. team that has been getting themselves on the map a lot lately. While this was going on, his teammate Frozen was playing in EGLX, and Frozen actually had a very strong finish as well. And I was kind of trying to think of other strong U.S. teams. The first one that comes to mind is Team Archon, and I think everybody knows Team Archon. That's Amaz's team, his lineup of Amnesiac, Zalay, Amaz himself, Backspace, and Dear Nadia, but she's primarily a streamer. But everyone thinks of that as an extremely strong team. Well, I counted it up. They have a combined 94 points right now for the Hearthstone Championship Tour. Muzzy and Frozen, the two best players on Hearthlytics, by themselves combined to 91. So,
Muzzy got 50.
Yeah, and Muzzy's at the top of the ladder with 50 points, which is unreal. He's top 5.
Behind Amnesiac only because of alphabetical order. And Amnesiac got a ton of points for winning America's Championship. So the fact that Muzzy got 50 points in the spring season just from, I think he had 4 consecutive top 10 ladder finishes. That dude is insane. He's so good.
I'm really eagerly awaiting him entering the tournament scene and getting a big win, because he's going to help put Hearthlytics on the map. So with all these guys in Hearthlytics, it's a great U.S. team. I think we need to keep our eyes open to them. So a few other tournaments I want to mention very, very quickly. The Soul Cup Invitational happened this past weekend, and I normally don't report on invitationals, but I only wanted to mention it because one of my players to watch, Matun, the Japanese champion from the winter season, had an amazing performance. He beat Osaka, the world champion, 3-2, and then swept Reynad 3-0 before losing the final match to Strife Crow 3-2. So a second place finish in a very, very tough tournament. Mm-hmm. Really great finish for Mattoon. Interested to see where that goes. Onog Open 5, One Nation of Gamers Open 5 happened as well. So a lot of tournaments happened this weekend. And again, I wouldn't mention a cup. Normally, we try to stick to the majors because there's so many things going on. But notable player from a previous episode, Chess Dude, came in with the final match, losing an extremely close match to Cora's former teammate, Shoop from Vicious Syndicate. So a great finish for Chess Dude, and hopefully we'll see him again real soon. Gold Series Shanghai finished. Sadly, the language barrier and the media blackout from China keeps us from getting any information. But I do know one thing from Gold Series Shanghai: they broke the trophy. During a presentation, someone dropped it, and there was a widespread panic as they tried to collect the trophy off the floor.
That's a terrible omen.
Oh no, yeah, it's such a strong tournament scene. I wish we could get more information out of China, but I'll keep trying, and I'll bring it if I can. So I'm sure everyone wants to know about the decks that everyone used this past weekend, and I've got a list in the show notes. There's plenty of Ramp Druid, a lot of them had Cthulhu, plenty of this modern Zoo Warlock with the Darkshire Councilman in there, and Forbidden Ritual. Aggro Shaman, of course, with all of the tools that Shaman got, plenty of that. And a good bit of Control Warrior and Patron Warrior, both of them doing fairly well. Now, out of those, the really successful decks were the Ramp Druid, the Control Warrior, and the Aggro Shaman, and the Miracle Rogue. Not many people played it, but when it was played, this new variation on Miracle Rogue was very, very good. It primarily got to its win condition through, the Auctioneer plus lots of cheap spells, and then trying to finish it off with Cold Blood combo, maybe backed up by a little bit of Eviscerate. But Firebat was running it over the weekend, and he did super well with it. It was a successful deck. So those are the decks probably to watch, but I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, last thing, upcoming this weekend, DreamHack Austin is going to be a great tournament. Last hero standing, best of 5, Swiss format. It'll break into a top 16 elimination round. It's a lot of locals. A couple of players of note, Frozen and Racy 591 will be there. Yeah, but right. Like 8 or 10 people from Celestial are on the player list, and I don't know what that's about, but they seem to be storming Austin. So that will be a very, very interesting tournament to watch.
That'll be really fun. I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm hoping to catch some of it. We'll see. But yeah, shout out to some of our VS friends. Racy's really cool. I got to hang out with him at BlizzCon last year. And Shoop, of course, he was one of our first. Yeah, actually, he was the first guest we had on this podcast. So
yep.
Very cool. Anything you want to add, Cora? I know he kind of tried to keep it as short as possible to make room for the rest of the show, but
yeah, like I said, I went back and forth between Onog and was it EGLX? Yeah, it was EGLX. For the weekend, and both were really enjoyable, had really great casting teams, really good players. My brother and I were sort of, just flipping off watching, and it was a great time. They were really good tournaments. I didn't get to catch the end of EGLX, but I did see the finals of Onog, so I was really happy for Shoop, obviously. Always excited for my friends. And then Ray going to DreamHack this weekend. There's so many people going to DreamHack. Tons of Hearthlytics representatives, Archon representatives, Tempo Storm. Celestial I did not know about, so that's really awesome. We're going to get to see some other regions represented in Austin. I'm a little sad because I couldn't go because school sucks out my soul, but that's okay. Maybe next year. So yeah, it's going to be really great to have a good mix of local players and some other country representatives in Austin, in the United States for the first DreamHack. So very exciting.
Yeah, this is the first DreamHack that's come to the United States, so this is actually a really big deal for us.
Yeah.
All right. The only other thing I was going to mention too, to just hearing about APX Void coming down to Copa America, that actually, I wonder how that was actually planned out, because I assume there's a lot of players that he didn't know much about, so he must have had at least a strong deck choice. You as a professional player, you want to kind of look into who you're playing against, what they may be bringing. So that's pretty impressive, I say, going down there and doing as well as he did.
a lot of those Brazilian players that were in the top 8 and some of the ones that didn't quite make it, those are all people with a good chunk of HCT points from tournament results and from ladder results. So these are known players. He definitely had plenty of research to do, and of course he's got a great team behind him with Hearthlytics. And he did have some really cool deck choices too. One of them was a tempo, like a hypermodern tempo mage, which was really cool to watch. But yeah, no, he definitely had he had information, he had teammates, he had research, he had practice, no doubt.
That's cool.
I think it also helped that it's the beginning of a new meta, so everything is so unpredictable that, any research that he could have done, I'm sure he did, but there's not much that you can physically do at that point when the meta is a week old. So yeah, at
Other
that
than
point,
just being a strong player.
Yeah, at that point, your preparation matters more.
Yeah, so. I was gonna say that, especially when a new meta game comes out, you can really see some of the best deck builders and some of the players that can adapt the fastest really rise to the top really fast. It's an exciting time because the more that an expansion is out and the more that players have time to play with the cards, more tuned out decks become, and the creativity in between them kind of diminishes a little bit. But right now we're in that time where everyone can be super creative and crazy things can happen.
Great. All right, so let me just squeeze in some thanks here on our iTunes. So we had a couple reviews this week. Thank goodness. Yay, it's about time.
Thank you.
All right, so I wanted to say there were a couple from USA, so feel free if you're in another region, I will shout it out on the podcast here. The first one's from Douchebeard. Apparently he really likes a clean beard. I would think that a clean beard is very nice.
That's awkward.
I just appreciate the honesty. He's straightforward about it.
But he said, great job of covering Hearthstone as an esport. Tournament insight not covered elsewhere. Worth a listen. Obviously, you just listened to it. And I'm sure we may get some new listeners. So we tried to incorporate this as part of our new direction is what we're going. A lot of people want to hear about the tournaments. Maybe they didn't get a chance to check it out and can learn from maybe the top decks or even the games that were played there. So major thanks to Cinder for doing a lot of that heaving on that portion. And then a second one is from USA from Left Hand V. This podcast covers the latest news from Blizzard, worldwide tournament results, and analysis, deck building possibilities for ladder meta. These gentlemen and lady offer a great weekly wrap-up for all things Hearthstone. Great listening been listening now for 3 straight weeks. Keep up the good work.
Wonderful.
Also, if you're worried about language with kids in the car, fear not. It is a safe listen. So yeah, thanks for noticing that too. We try and keep it.
Yeah.
It's funny. When we came together, we never really even talked about how we were going to handle language. I think we just all kind of had the same philosophy of making it as accessible as possible, and that's just the way we've naturally grown, and I love it.
Yeah, I'm so happy with the way that this podcast has grown, and yeah, I've been guesting on other podcasts, and the styles are so different. It's really interesting to see from behind the scenes when you're actually, on the show, how different people work. But I'm just, I'm thrilled to be a part of this with you guys, and yeah, special thanks to Kenny for finding you guys when I was, missing in action for 2 months.
Well, you were doing something super cool. I don't think anybody can blame you.
Yeah. All right, cool. So a special thank you to those, and I hope to have more soon here. Let's go into our next section here. Hopefully we have plenty of time to talk about it. It's our Dexplanation. All right, so also at the top here, I do want to mention you can send in an email to us at coinconcede.com. We did receive an email later. I'll go ahead and hopefully we can get some time with that. I think we should have enough time. But yeah, let's go straight into this so we can get to that email. And again, coinconcede@gmail.com. So, well, okay. Who wants to bring up what this week's is about? So basically, the new release, we've already talked about deck building. What is everyone looking at this right now? What are you most concerned about?
I think this week it would be a good opportunity to discuss the metagame. Maybe a brief description of what it is, why it's important, and then how each of us has been approaching it. how do you incorporate it into gameplay, and then we can touch a little bit on some of the common decks that we've been seeing in the ladder. What should you be watching out for, and then maybe a brief explanation on how these decks work, and how you can use them, or how you can play against them. So to just kick it off, I just wanted to talk about what is the meta game and why it's important to talk about it. To me, the meta game is the general consensus of archetypes of decks that are in the ladder pool at the time. So what I mean by this is when you join the ladder queue, what is generally the archetypes that you're gonna run into? And by archetypes I mean control, aggro, or mid-range, to kind of summarize those in just a few. And these are just playstyles that people have, right? Sometimes people decide to be really, really aggressive and play very fast decks that try to kill you as fast as possible. Sometimes people tend to play more control decks that are more reactive. They try to run you down of resources and then kill you on their own terms. And the meta game tends to be cyclical. Because the nature of Hearthstone tends to be like a rock, paper, and scissor kind of game. People are always looking to counter the decks that are popular out there, creating kind of a vicious cycle of some decks predating on other decks and kind of and so on.
I think that's a perfect example. The rock paper scissors is perfect because it does seem like that triangular feel where you have aggro, mid range, and control, and it's best to kind of take a look at what you're playing against. So I actually have a whiteboard right next to me, and it's easiest to kind of say, oh, I played against a control, just to generally get everything together, and then you can kind of dive deeper into what specifically you're playing against within the meta itself, or what style you're playing against. I think that's perfect insight. I know Cinder has been talking. He's going to want to rest a little bit longer. What do you think, Cora?
Yeah, the meta is very complex, and obviously ever changing, but to the point where the meta can change, within hours. Which I feel like a lot of people don't realize. So you can build your decks to target a meta, and by the time you're done building your deck, the meta can be different. So depending on, especially since in the Americas, depending on when North American players are playing versus when European players who play on the North American server are awake and playing, the meta is going to be different. So as much as you try to target a meta, it's very difficult. But it can be done, and that's what the best players do is they make the metas work for them. And there's a little bit of luck involved, and there's a lot of skill involved, and it's complex, and it's I guess that's what I'm trying. I think I said what I meant to say.
Just to be clear, there's a lot of decks that are being played in Hearthstone at all times, but there tends to be patterns in between those decks that spark up every once in a while, and these patterns depend on many, many different factors, right? But why should you be aware of these patterns, and why should you be looking out for them? Obviously, like you said, Cora, the best players are very keen to looking out and detecting these patterns before they happen or as they're happening, and they can adapt to them really quickly. And that leads into increased win streaks or easier matches for you because you're not fighting against the flow. Instead, you're going with it, right? And you're adapting to it in a way that favors you. A good example of this is, and just to be simple, if you're seeing a ton of aggro hunter, right? The metagame is super aggressive, aggro hunter all over the place. You might be thinking, well, if I can just pick a control warrior that can deal with a lot of the early aggression and then beef myself up with a ton of armor to counter his aggressive burst, then I'll be good. And then if you run into 5 of these hunters in a row, because that deck tends to be popular at that time of the day, then you're going to have an easier time winning all of those matches because the balance of power in those games is tilted towards you already from the get-go.
Yeah,
So that's the main advantage of knowing the meta.
And just you brought up a great example, and I think it's worth saying explicitly, what how those archetypes fit into a meta analysis. You have aggro, mid-range, and control. Aggro is high tempo. They want as much damage on the board as possible, and they want to kill you as fast as possible. Mid-range is looking for value. They want cards with good health and decent attack that can stick and can continuously pressure the opponent. And then control is worried more about accumulating card advantage. They want to have as many cards as possible to draw into their removal, to draw into their win conditions, and to stall the game for as long as possible. And that rock, paper, scissors is usually, it's not always, sometimes there are exceptions, but it's usually aggro beats mid-range, mid-range beats control, control beats aggro, if you want to think about it that way. And that's what people are talking about when they say the rock, paper, scissors. Meta really literally means like the thing outside. The meta game is the game above the game, right? You're playing a game of Hearthstone, but the game above that you're trying to play is the guessing game of what am I going to hit on the ladder. Exactly.
Yeah, and that is a great way of putting it, and that is in very general terms, because as you said, that is kind of like generally how it goes, but of course it gets a lot more nuanced than that, and that is why players who spend a lot of time thinking about these problems and practicing their decks can become really good, because it's not always that a mid-range deck is going to be bad against a control deck. In fact, a good mid-range player, once they see that the meta game has adapted into a lot of control, might change their mid-range deck a little bit to suit that control-heavy meta and still thrive with his mid-range deck. So, like I said, it's a little more nuanced than that, but generally, yes, that's how it goes.
I got a question for you guys. So, I'm just curious to see what your point of view is on this. So, there are times where it seems like you're just tilting. You're not playing the optimal deck for what you're playing against at this time. Do you play a certain amount of sessions or a certain amount of games before you consider it like a bad laddering session? And to use an example, everyone's going to have at least 3 games of losses in a row. Like, at what point do you decide that that was the case for this and just to keep going? Or is it going to turn around? Like, what do you look at as far as reading the meta and how that relates to your play session currently?
That's a really great question, and I think this one is one that we can all kind of like take over as a group. How does each of us read the meta, and how can you tell if you're making accurate calls or you're just kind of tilting and focusing on the decks that are beating you while they're not really being like the majority of decks you're playing?
I think the best way to do it is after playing for so long, you obviously know your deck and you know what your good matchups should be. So if you keep running into those matchups and maybe you're tilted and you're losing for reasons that are out of your control, maybe you got some bad luck, maybe your opponent just drew the nuts, which happens sometimes, then you're still well situated in the meta. Then you're losing, but you're perhaps not losing for reasons that you can control. If you're playing a list and keep running into bad matchups, then that is probably when your deck is just not well situated in the meta. And that is something that you can control. You can't control your luck, but you can control the deck that you're playing, and you can't control the decks you're playing against, obviously, but you can change your deck to fit better in the meta. So yeah, definitely you just need to differentiate between what is in your control and what is out of your control, and what is the reason that you're seeing bad results on ladder.
Let me piggyback off of that question here real quick, if you don't mind, Andres.
Yeah, go for it.
At what point can you tell it's your play, and if you're making the right plays, or if it's your deck? Like, how would you, as a legendary player, how do you pick that out easily? How could you explain that to people who aren't legendary players?
I think you have to be objective when you're making this sort of call. Really pay attention to your games. And when you're in your games, you have to be looking at, when you're playing against these decks, are some of your cards completely dead in the sense that they offer no response to the cards that you're seeing? An example of this is you're playing Miracle Rogue, and you're only AoE or ways to clear the board is Dark Iron Skulker, and you're running into a bunch of Patron Warriors. And it turns out that if you Dark Iron Skulker into a Patron Warrior board, you're just going to create a bunch more, and you're never going to be able to get rid of a bunch of them. So this would be like a good tell of like, okay, Dark Iron Skulker is just not working in the current metagame. I should change this. The other scenario would be you're playing with your Dark Iron Skulker against a bunch of Sue decks, but you just have gotten really unlucky, have never really drawn it when they play their little tentacle card that they have that creates a bunch of like 1/1 tentacles. Forbidden Ritual. Yeah. Or alternatively, maybe you did draw into your Skulker, but you played it early to just clear like 2 minions, and then he played the Forbidden Ritual right after that. So that might be more of like you making a misplay rather than like, hey, I might maybe playing the wrong deck for the metagame right now.
Yeah, for me, it's for my sample size, I think that's what Kenny was kind of getting at. I try to play at least 10 games before I go back and look at my data and get an idea of what I've been playing against. Because anything smaller than that is almost just too small of a sample size. Because there's 9 classes, So if any class is being played, if the classes are being played relatively evenly, you'll not get enough data for that, right? So for at least 10 games, if I see the same 4 or 5 decks in a row, I know that there's a strong possibility that there's a deck that is popular. That deck is popular at that moment, and I can try to target that deck. And I got a great example of that this past weekend. Since everyone got Cthulhu, everyone was running a Cthulhu deck, right?
Yeah.
So at first I tried Cthulhu decks, and it really just became a game of who plays Cthulhu first, which is not terribly fun. So what I did was I said, okay, let me think about what makes a Cthulhu deck, and primarily they're built on that curve, right? The curve of the Cthulhu cultists. You play 1 on 2, on 3, on 4, on 5, and so forth. So really, it's built like kind of a slow mid-range deck, and it tries to top out at Cthulhu. So I said, all right, so if it's a slow mid-range, what I need is a fast aggro deck to beat it. I need to win by turn 7, 8, or 9 at the latest. And if I can do that, you'll never play Cthulhu. You're not going to get great board impact off of the cultists, and I'm just going to rush face and win. And that's exactly what happened. I had over 70% win rate with an aggro hunter over the weekend, and that was fantastic. And then the new season started. And I'll even just kind of piggyback on my own comment here. There are certain times of the month and even of the day where the meta is different. You'll notice in Hearthstone that during the beginning of the season, you'll see a lot of aggressive decks because people are trying to climb quickly. And then you'll see a bunch of very, very control-y, taunt-heavy decks, usually priest decks, that are trying to counter those. So me jumping in with my hunter at the beginning of the season ended up being a 50-50 proposition. So I had to switch to something more mid-range to try to counter both of those deck styles. So being aware of what you're playing against, you need a significant sample size. And also when you're looking at your samples, your data samples, be aware of what time of day and what time of month you're playing. Because if you look over a month of data, you will actually see some trends, and it doesn't take much to look over it. Just an Excel sheet, or I use Hearthstone Deck Tracker to track my data. It's very simple. Just track: did you win, did you lose, and what class did you play against?
I think that is a super important point, trends, because nobody here can read the future, right? Yeah. But everyone here can kind of know trends, and people like trends, especially in Hearthstone, where it's a game that requires so much information and you have to put in so much work to kind of figure out some of these puzzles. A lot of people are just looking for this information, and that creates trends. And like you said, the most surefire way to see what your current metagame is just to literally play the field. Just go out there and play as many games as you can, and that's how you're going to get the most first-hand experience of what really is out there. But unfortunately, if you're just doing this with no other information, you're kind of going in there blind. So you're hoping that the deck that you pick is going to work out, and then you might adapt it afterwards, but that might cost you a couple losses. There's a couple of tricks, though, like you said, because you can watch out for trends so that you're not going in so blind. Like you said, at the beginning of the season or at the end of the season, people might be playing different things. In the beginning, aggro is popular. In the end, more established and maybe more mid-range control decks to start the norm. But then there's also other little tricks that you can use, or that I use personally to kind of inform myself of the meta. This can be, for example, watch popular streamers. At different times of the day, there's usually like 3 or 4 streamers that are really, really popular in Hearthstone that have like 5,000 to 10,000 viewers. And they're usually playing a certain type of deck, and they offer the deck list for everyone to view. And it's interesting the effect that these people can have on the metagame, because there's so many people that are currently watching them and simultaneously playing the game, and they literally just neck deck out of them because it eliminates a lot of the work required to create a viable deck.
And very well, the best example of this that I've seen was last season. Tice played Astral Communion Druid on ladder.
Yep.
And suddenly, like an hour after he started playing it, he made it to rank 4, and everybody started playing Astral Communion Druid. And I started playing Mid-Range Hunter to counter it. Like, Mid-Range Hunter curved out so well, and Hunter's Mark was just so good against these large minions, Freezing Trap. I tweeted at Tice, I'm like, hey, thanks, Tice, for playing Astral Communion Druid, so I'm farming them all with Mid-Range Hunter. And he like, favorited it. I'm like, that's like the most basic way you can counter the meta is you see a deck that is so prevalent, and say Freeze Mage is all over ladder. How do you counter Freeze Mage? Control Warrior. Like, that's like the basics of meta countering, and like these streamers have such an impact. It's incredible.
Yes, they do. Streamers can be a great source of information on what it could be the meta game at the moment. Other things that you can watch out for is current tournaments. Tournaments tend to have that effect too, especially if they're really big and they're really well watched. A lot of people will like to imitate the deck list that a lot of tournament players are using, or the top finishers will use. So other things to watch out for. And I would say the last thing, and maybe more for a general picture of what you might expect in the upcoming weeks, more not so much of a specific this is what it is right now, but more of like this is what it's gonna be generally in the next week, is the Tempo Storm or the Liquid Hearth meta snapshot that they do. That generally tends to give you a pretty good idea of the pile of decks that you're going to be running into. What are you going to be running into is more of a detective work you have to do yourself, but that's a general idea thing that you can have.
And I also want to throw onto the pile, Hearthhead has a weekly meta report as well that's actually very good.
Yeah, there's a ton.
Yeah, those 3 are the big ones, but there are a lot of them out there.
I don't have so much. I mean, he pretty much went over all the informational part here. I could just pull from my experience and what I do myself. So I just like Cinder was mentioning, I like to play at least 10 games just to kind of figure out what's out there right now, and then kind of self-reflect and see what to do if I'm going to want to play a different type of deck, or what I tend to do for that is to pick a more like a deck that can adapt well to either
a well-rounded deck.
Yeah, and that way, as I'm keeping track, I can change my playstyle. So perfect example, my last game, I'll pull it back up here, I use Tracobot, so that actually keeps track of every card that was played that game, who I played against, what rank I was at, the time. It keeps track of all of that. But if I just pull up my last game here, I played my aggro shaman versus more like a mid-range, more control shaman. I literally did 51 points of damage against him to finally win, and it took 16 turns.
Oh, man.
Jeez.
So
that's a long time.
I had to change my play style to figure out how to work, play against him, and it's against a control style deck. That was something I had to change. So that's what I mean by adaptive deck, and then I could go into something more adaptive to what I'm seeing on the ladder. So that's just my 2 cents there.
So, like, one more thing I want to drive home about the why to examine the meta. I mean, it is fun. I mean, first of all, I get a lot of enjoyment out of trying to figure out this puzzle that's constantly changing. But if your goal is to get as high on ladder as possible, even if it's just to rank 10 or to rank 5, not necessarily to legend, the better your win rate, the quicker you're going to get there. It's as simple as that. And I cannot tell you how much of a drastic difference in time it gives if you improve your win percentage by even like 1 or 2 points. Going from like 55 to 57%, you're going to shave hours and hours off of your total play time for the month to reach your goal. So when you're trying to find edges, just getting a few more wins throughout the week, that's one of the reasons why you want to examine the meta.
Yeah, I think that summarizes this very well. That's a super fair point. And I think the distinction is super important. If you want to be competitive at this game, not if you just want to play it for fun or stuff, but if you want to be competitive, learning how to read the meta is a skill that you need to learn how to develop just as much as like playing any deck. Because yes, it will shave you so much time. It will get you up to legend so much faster, especially if you want to compete at legend and not just get to legend at the end of the month, but actually be there and compete for a while. Cool. Do you guys want to move on to maybe the next section? We wanted to discuss a little bit of the decks that we have all been seeing in the ladder. I kind of summarized a few of the ones that I've been seeing the most, especially today, because I play the game a lot today. So kind of got a glimpse of that, and it's interesting to see how things are kind of evolving. Basically, what I have seen is on Cthulhu, Warrior and Druid have become the most predominant one, with the N'Zoth kind of archetype. Paladin and Rogue are kind of like rising to the top, and mid-range aggro shaman is becoming super strong. What do you guys think, and what have you guys seen?
Well, I started down at rank 19 like most everybody else this month, and since I started on day 1, I saw a lot of very aggressive decks, and then a lot of Dragon Priest trying to counter those aggressive decks like we talked about. So I went with a Patron Warrior, and I have literally not lost a game since yesterday with Patron Warrior.
Oh wow!
Yeah, like because it has
Patron
so many.
Is becoming a thing.
It's a very good deck. It has so many ways to address small minions, like with all the whirlwind effects with the new ghoul, and then it's so fast. Like once you hit turn 6 and you do a patron combo, and you back it up with a frothing or maybe with Hogger, you can usually punch in enough damage by turn 8 or 9 before they can even get their win conditions online for the slower decks. So it's been a great deck for the meta for me, at least for this part of the month.
What do you think, Cora? What have you been seeing in the ladder?
I've been seeing quite a bit of variety, which I'm really happy about. Yeah, like you said, Cthulhu, Druid, and Warrior. A little bit of Cthulhu, Mage, and Warlock as well.
Yeah, there's Cthulhu of like everything, but Warrior and Druid seem to be taking the lead there.
Yeah, Yogg-Saron I've seen mostly in Mages. I've seen a lot of mid-range Shaman, a lot of aggro Shaman as well. That Zoo list that's running around, that's just so good.
It's good. So good.
But like Zoo's just always going to be good. Darkshire Councilman is absurd. What else?
We may have underestimated that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think everybody did. And a fair amount of Control Warrior, actually. I've been looking at some of the popular Warrior players' tweets, and they're all saying that Control Warriors, VLPS and show, saying that Control Warrior is just insane right now. But I don't think that people have realized that quite yet. The new Ravaging Ghoul in Patron Warrior is really strong. I played that at the end of last month. I've been having fun. I've been playing around with a couple different decks: N'Zoth, Rogue, the Zoo list, mid-range Shaman. Just trying to get a feel for what I really will enjoy to play, because I'm a fan of the ideology that you're always going to play better if you enjoy playing. So I'm just trying to find that deck that like I connect with. I guess.
Fits your style.
Yeah, exactly. So, but lots and lots of different styles on ladder right now. So harder to pin down a meta when it's so full of variety. But at this point, I would just encourage just play what you want. And then when you actually want to like buckle down and really try to ladder hard, then assess the meta. And even then, it might still be really difficult at this point.
It might take a few, like, I don't know, a month or a couple months to really settle down. What about you, Kenny? What have you been seeing?
Good question. So I actually I've been playing my aggro shaman just because it was working so well for me, and I was glad that aggro was still okay for me with the type of time that I have to play.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I was seeing obviously Cthulhu Druid, some rogue, obviously N'Zoth, and Yogg mages, and the Zoo warlocks. Those were like the main ones that I would see. What I was going to ask you guys is actually, of the old gods, Yogg, Saran, N'Zoth, even Cthulhu, what do you feel is the most successful of them? Like, I feel like Cthulhu is more upfront and end game-ish than Yogg Saran. Tends to be like, okay, you play it and you're both still alive. You know, it's still a game.
Hopefully, you're both still alive after you play it.
Yeah. So what do you
honestly,
how do you feel
like? I think Cthulhu is definitely strong, but when the first cultist that gets played, you're playing against Cthulhu. So all you have to do is hold a removal in your deck. Or in your hand rather, and then wait it out. And as soon as Cthulhu hits, he'll probably wipe the board and do a bunch of damage. But from what I've seen, like the backbone of the Cthulhu decks are not as strong when you're playing it as a mid range. So then once Cthulhu gets played, it doesn't finish the game, and then you can just play your removal and get a big tempo swing on your side. So it's not the game winner that people might think it is. Now, unless you're playing Control Cthulhu, a Control Warrior with Cthulhu, that deck is nuts. Because it is primarily a fatigue deck that will completely run you out of cards, and then play Cthulhu, and then probably recycle it with a Doom Caller. And that is a nuts deck if you can get it to work right. And I love that deck, it just takes too long to play. But the strongest one, N'Zoth, like hands down. Like I had a feeling that was going to be the case going in. I mentioned it, in the last couple of weeks. I mentioned it on Realm Maintenance. Hey, Ro. But like the N'Zoth decks, just when you can just refill your board, sometimes multiple times with the right builds, bananas.
I must agree with that statement. I think N'Zoth right now is super, super strong. Cthulhu is in a weird spot because I think the Cthulhu decks tend to be quite good against aggro just because you really only have to stall them enough, and once you wipe their board and put, like a 17-17 in front of them, you've won the game. But they really kind of start lacking on like the mid-range, especially on the control matchups, because like you said, you can just stall them and then remove their Cthulhu while you still have enough value minions to run them over. N'Zoth, though, is my newfound love. Oh my god, that card is so insanely good. I started playing, the reason I say it was because I started playing exclusively the new Death Rattle Rogue when the expansion came out. So play a ton of that, ton of experience with that, and then today I swapped to that Paladin N'Zoth deck, and it was amazing how strong it felt. I went from rank 14 to rank 8, just playing this morning and afternoon, and I think I would have climbed higher if it wasn't because I run into a streak of freaking Cthulhu warriors. I don't know who was playing it, either Maz or I think Crip or something, but everyone started playing it too. And even though I felt favor in that matchup because you can literally just spam dudes and only play your Death Rattle minions while holding on to everything to your dear life. And even them carrying double brawl, you're able to put enough pressure and carry them to fatigue to the point where they're forced to brawl you, and you just N'Zoth everything back. And even if they're on fatigue, you have Forbidden Healing to heal you for like 20 life. So you're just holding on there. And then even against aggro, you have massive board clear after board clear. You got Pyro Equality, Pyro Consecrate, you got 2 Doomsayers. So you can clear anything with that deck. I don't know. N'Zoth feels super strong right now to me.
All right, not to cut us short here, but I want to try and get to our email still, too. I have one last question, if we could each quickly answer it. Was there anything that you played against that surprised you with how well it worked against you?
Yes.
So I'll start by saying yes. I was playing aggro shaman, obviously, and there was a death rattle hunter that actually just KO'd me. He was at full health. I couldn't do anything. It was so that, and then specifically I played against a warlock that threw out a molten giant, and that taunt that actually copies the health copies it. Yeah, that
shambler or whatever.
Yeah, it was. I was done there. Mm-hmm. That surprised me. It was like, oh, I'm done. Concede.
Yeah. Yeah, I played against that same list, Elke, if you guys know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's played for Team Liquid. I played against him on ladder, and he was playing it. And I was so surprised that it was just like traditional handlock. Like it's just a handlock list, and then you put in the Faceless Shambler. And I was playing Patron Warrior, and I would have won, except both my executes were in the bottom 4 cards of my deck. But I was so surprised that just regular good old handlock that's been around for
years
is still so effective.
Yeah.
The one surprising.
Oh, go for it.
The one surprising deck I saw, I didn't get to play against it, but it was APX Void's Tempo Mage. I didn't know where Tempo Mage was going to be in the new set, like with the loss of a couple of tools, but he played it like a champ at Copa America, and I definitely want to copy that list and try it out because it looks like a ton of fun.
My surprising moment was witnessing this Druid player pretty much win the lottery against me. He turn 1 double innervate into Astral Communion, into a turn 2 he charged the Unbound. Which brought in a free.
That's probably the first time that ever worked for him.
I thought I won the Druid lottery by getting a 10/10 Ancient of War by turn 4. But no, that just charge wins. That's real.
It was bound to happen.
Hey, that actually is. I mean, that earned a wow. I didn't even think of the charge.
I was so confused. I was like, wow, that actually worked, and I was the unfortunate victim of it.
That's probably the first time that ever worked for him.
I thought I won the Druid lottery by getting a 10/10 Ancient of War by turn 4. But no, that just charge wins. That's real.
It was bound to happen. I was just unfortunate. I was the one it happened to.
All right, so let's move into our email before we head out here. So we thank you very much for sending it in. We do appreciate it. This is from Bronson. He said, "Greetings, Coin Concede. I've been listening to your show since February, and I've found it entertaining, and the advice that you have given on your show has been priceless. In particular, I would really like to thank you for your deck building episode last week. With your help, I was able to make a mid-range mage list. And just to kind of shorten this a little bit, I wouldn't have been able to do it without you guys' help, especially Andres. I'm curious to see what you think about the deck and if you have any suggestions on how to improve it." And he listed his deck. So, yeah, I don't know if you had a chance to check that out. I did send it to you earlier this week. We got it a couple days ago, actually. What do you want to say about this, Andres?
Yeah, I really appreciate the email. Thanks for sending it in. I went through the list for a little bit. The one thing that I saw is that you are trying to combine 2 archetypes, and I always feel like the killer of fun every time I say this. But whenever I see like 2 archetypes being combined, it kind of makes me doubt it a little bit, just because when you're spreading your deck thin into a Malagos and a Cthulhu, you're trying to have 2 win conditions that you're actively bidding for, and usually I prefer to just focus on one. Either you're going for your Cthulhu, or you're going for kind of like a combo Thorson style Malagos finish kind of thing. From what I see over here, the deck might work, but in some games you're gonna run into this thing where you're gonna have your Malagos and some cultists, and never be able to pull off your combo in any way. That's the take that I see from it. Did you guys get a chance to see the list?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing that I see that he did include, and this is great because I think it's kind of a sleeper card that's doing a lot of work for mage players, is the Cult Sorcerer. It's a 3/2 with a Cthulhu buffing mechanic, but he has spell damage +1, and like that one extra damage over the Kobold is actually it's a really big deal. Being able to challenge just about everything from 1 to 3, and giving you spell power. Like this, you drop this guy, and for 1 mana, you can hit a minion for 4 damage with Arcane Blast. Like, it's a great tempo tool. And I think he's on to a good idea with having something that functions as kind of like partially Cthulhu and partially Tempo Mage.
Yeah.
Because I think he definitely can. He has room to do both, but I think you're right. I think the Malygos is probably not the top end that he wants.
I was going to say, if you're going to run Malygos, you definitely want to think about cards like Emperor Thaurissan, because your Malygos by itself, unfortunately, you're not able to cast anything simultaneously with it, and you run into this problem where you just playing it and crossing your fingers, hoping your opponent doesn't have any removal for it, so that you can actually take advantage of the effect the turn after. So I would say if you're trying to run this sort of deck, make it a very control-y deck where you can at one point kind of clear the board and play Thaurissan safely, get a discount on some of your combo spells, and then you have like the double win condition there with Malygos and Cthulhu. But then again, you're spreading it into 2 win conditions.
Yeah, and then if you have Malygos and you have 2 Frostbolts, you definitely want 2 Ice Lances as well, just because when they're discounted, they're free. So that's going to be a really nice way to get that burst damage. But Cthulhu is already a really nice way to get that burst damage. So I think there is a way they can work together. It's tough. It's tough to put.
You're right about the Cold Sorcerers. They're
together.
amazing. Yeah, they're amazing cards, and you do have like the spell power kind of going on there. So I can envision kind of like a control Cthulhu archetype where you can just use your Cthulhu cultist kind of as fodder to keep your opponent kind of like on tempo with you. You're not trying to really threaten him in the early game, but just gonna keep him in check. And then look for a safe turn to drop a Thaurissan, get a discount on your spells, and then you can kind of drop your Cthulhu not as your entire win condition, but just to soften it up, and then Malygos as your finisher. But then you have to think, like you said, Corey, you have to think of it as how do you make this a win condition? Frostbolt and Icelands can be one. If you can get him all 3 of them discounted, then you can play, or just 2 of them, right? Frostbolt and Malygos discounted. They can even play all 3 for, well, how much damage would that be? 8 plus 7, 15?
Yeah.
So a 15 damage combo you got?
Pretty good.
That's kind of my take on it.
Perfect. Yeah, that was nice and quick. We're at the end of the show here, so let's go ahead and just kind of say our last biddings here. So, again, we have our Patreon that's been reset here, and hopefully you have a chance to check it out and see what you can do. If you love the show, definitely go check that out at patreon.com/CoinConcede. Help us make our first goal of making this podcast self-supporting. It doesn't hurt to drop 1 drink a month, or so you go to Starbucks to get a coffee. You could save a couple dollars and just help us out because you enjoy our show. Yeah, check that out. Corey, you want to give the other thanks before we head out?
Absolutely. Special thanks to Stefan for letting us use his cover at the beginning. You guys can always check him out on his channel, which is linked on our show notes. And you can catch our blog post at www.coinconcede.com, along with our show notes, which we reference all throughout the show, so make sure you go check those out. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede, and like and share our Facebook page at facebook.com/CoinConcede.
Perfect. Andres, where can people find you after the show here?
If you want to find me, you can follow me on Twitter at iPlayGames. You can also occasionally watch me stream Hearthstone or Overwatch on Twitch TV/iPlayGames with a Z. And you can check out my Overwatch podcast, the Omnic Lab, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Twitch at Twitch TV/Omnic Lab.
Great. And Cinder, where can people find you?
On the Twitterverse at Cinder Ascendant. Give me a follow on Twitch if you want to watch me play Hearthstone mediocrely. Twitch.tv/Cinder Ascendant. And since my AC is back on and I can come into my office, I definitely want to start streaming again. And also, everybody come to the Discord channel. We have a Discord chat channel. It's totally free and totally cool, and we're all there, and I hang out there all the time. Discord.coinconcede.com. And we even have voice channels, so if you want to chat with us on voice while we're playing a game, that's a possibility.
I am a witness. You are there all the time, so if you guys ever want to chat in there, just come in.
I work during the day, but when I come home at night, I'm in there. Oh, and one more special shout out to Ro from the Realm Maintenance podcast. My interview with him dropped this past Monday, so if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. It was a really fun talk about Whispers of the Old Gods and about how Coin Concede got started and where it is now. And he has a cool podcast too. So all those things, go check it out.
Yeah, he has definitely a cool podcast. And Cora, where can people find you?
You guys can always follow me on Twitter at songbird_HS. If you throw me a follow, make sure you tweet at me or message me. Let me know what you think about the show. And you can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SageCora. I haven't been streaming too often, but I try to get it up a couple times a week. And it'll be more so during the summer, but my last couple weeks of school are pretty crazy. So, I'm going to be hopefully more often in the near future. So make sure you stop by. Let me know you listen to the show, and tell me what you think.
Perfect. And just wanted to take a chance to say thanks for listening to all the new people that checked us out through Cora being a guest on other podcasts, or even Cinder being on Realm Maintenance. Shout out to all our lovely podcasts, brothers and sisters out there. That's really cool that we get a chance to do that, and hopefully we'll get the chance to replicate that with having people on our show as well. So just about me. You can find me at KCCO_gamer on Twitter and Twitch, and you can add me on BattleNet at KCCO gamer, no underscore, and that's number 1752. So perfect. That pretty much wraps it all up. All I want to say now is just keep calm and chive on, and until then, Coin Concede.
Coin Concede.
Coin Concede.
Coin Concede. Woo!
Perfect.
Yay. That was a good show.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice tight ship there.